being the appointed hour, I call to order the HPC meeting for this day. Could we have a roll call?
Yes, Ruth Cox.
Present.
Rick York.
Here.
James Bisbee.
Here.
Peggy Broadway.
Here.
Joseph Klotz.
Here.
Alan Sheridan and Annette Stone are not here yet. And absent. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. All right, so I call for a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes.
So move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. There's no approval of the minutes. Okay.
Wait, we do have minutes to approve though.
The minutes from June the 13th,
June 16th.
16th, sorry. Okay. So are there any adjustments to the minutes of June the 16th? Okay. So can I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the minutes for June 16th have passed.
I know.
Okay.
Good.
I don't think I've been in here in 10 years, y'all.
So as an introduction to our hearings this evening, the Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It is responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, downtown and Riverside, based on U.S. Department of Interior standards, state standards, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for certificate of appropriateness. The Commission hears sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, by parties who received notice of the hearing, and by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to the specific historic guidelines. Likewise, commissioners shall refrain from stating personal opinions, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during a hearing. The Commission's decisions are based on an application is based solely on testimony and evidence presented at a hearing that directly relates to the historic guidelines. Sir, if you can swear in any presenters for tonight. We have 3 applications for tonight.
Madam Chair, I'll be recusing myself from the first item on the agenda because I received notification.
Okay. All
And I
right.
will be making comments. So
We'll come to that in just a minute
Okay.
or so.
Okay, so anyone who will be speaking this evening, please come forward and be sworn. Okay. So, yes.
Do you?
Well,
Do
I'm
you
up
need-
here right now.
Okay. No, you can still put down.
He doesn't have to be sworn in, does he?
I think it's probably the correct thing to
When
do.
he
Yeah,
starts
go
talking.
on down and get sworn in, because you're gonna have to.
There you go. So Joe intends to talk.
Oh, okay.
Because I think he swears in as a board member, and
Ah. Double layer. Double layers.
All right.
So if you're gonna speak in any capacity, you need to come forward now.
Very good.
Now is the time.
Do you swear to tell the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
All right. And if you haven't already, please sign the sworn-in sheet.
So this is the summary of our procedure for a COA application. The HPC administrator provides an overview of the application. The applicant or their representative presents the application. Proponents and opponents who receive notice of the hearing can present evidence. Rebuttal is allowed by the applicant and by proponents and opponents who received notice. Others who can justify that they have relevant information and will be directly affected can present evidence. The HPC commissioner presents the staff's findings and their recommendations. The applicant or their representative has an opportunity to make final comments on their application. Commissioners discuss the evidence and they ask for clarification from the applicant or the presenters. The chairman calls for a motion to approve or deny the application with stated findings of facts. The motion is discussed by the commission. The chairman calls for a vote on the motion by the commission. A COA can be approved. It can be approved with conditions or it can be denied. So we will move forward with our first application, which is 211 Pollock Street.
Madam Chair, I need to be recused.
Yes? Okay.
Did
You received a letter?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All righty.
Move we recuse Joe Klotz.
Okay. All of those in favor?
Madam
say-
Chair, just
Yes.
as a matter of clarity, can we state Mr. Klotz's reason for his recusal on the record?
Yes, I just said he did it because he lives directly across the street. You want him to say it?
Yes, please.
She wants you to say
I
it.
received a letter notifying me as an informed person who lived within the 100-foot margin.
Thank you, Mr. Klotz.
So we've had a motion for your recusal.
In a second.
That is second. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We will let you sit out in the audience.
Yes, and Madam Chair, I too have a conflict of interest as I am representing applicants for items B and C on the agenda as their architect.
Okay. So do we have a motion to have our co-chair removed?
So move.
All of those in favor say aye.
You need a second, Madam Chair.
We have, yes, second? Second. Thank you, second. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none. We will let you,
Are we now without a quorum?
no, we still have a quorum because a quorum goes with who you started with. Am I right, ma'am?
A quorum is related to the number of people present that are eligible to vote.
Okay. So,
And Madam Chair, just for the sake of our record keeper, can the person who made the motion to affirm Mr. Klotz's recusal raise their hand?
Jim Bisbee.
And the second? Ms. Broadway?
Tripp York.
Oh, it's Tripp. Okay.
okay, so we now have 4 of us up here. And so that's enough for a quorum. Okay. All right, so let us go to the first item then, which is 211 Pollock Street. Sir, if you can give us an overview of that?
Absolutely. Okay, so we're beginning with the application shown here on the screen. And you can see the information is provided completely and then signed and dated by the authorized representative. This is the cover sheet for that application, and this is the certificate of appropriateness owner's authorization for MBF architects. And it's been notarized. So I'm gonna have to make this smaller, as the drawings are quite large. this is essentially the entrance straight into the existing doorway of the front of the building. We have two more elevations from the side, from each side, from the east side over here on the left, and from the west side on the right. And so you can also see those 4-foot walls remain at that height or lower throughout the project. And you can see some representation of some of the landscaping that will be submitted later. The project also includes some light bricks, lights that look like bricks embedded in the brick walls. So this is a rendering that was requested at the design review meeting showing the project in the streetscape, and you can see down here on the right is what we're talking about. And then from the other direction, also requested at the design review meeting, there's an arrow here to show where it is because you actually can't really see it from this angle. Or where points to where it would be. So this is a rendering much closer up to give you a better idea of the actual design. Yeah, I'm not sure who all can see that. I think a lot of glare. We can make this larger if you'd like. We'll skip that for now. Continue. We have the zoning and inspectors report here as well. And that one is not signed. Okay, I can pull out the signed one in my folder here. If you'd like, I can put it on the screen. See if this one works today. Okay. Need some technical help? Or that's not looking good, or?
Madam Chair, would it be okay if you just passed it around to all of us to see, or how do we go about that?
I think you want them to see it.
All right.
We can just maybe take pictures right away. We'll have it on video as well that way. meantime,
There you go.
I'll start with the chair here.
Okay,
So you can see it has been signed and reviewed and commented.
yes?
Primarily, it's working. Oh, it does.
No.
It's not so easy to see, but
And then,
you need a hand up. No. All right. Okay. That helps. So, this shows that the zoning official has reviewed it and said that it does meet the zoning requirements. And the building official has also reviewed it and said it does require a building permit. And then, we are ready with our recommendations when you're ready.
Okay. So we've already had several people been recused over this. Do we have the applicant who would like to make comments?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Trip Ewer. I'm a principal with NBF Architects, representing the applicant. We would like to thank you for allowing us time at design review to help craft our application to get us to this point tonight. Our application is technically unchanged from what we reviewed at design review. The only changes are that additional renderings were asked for, which we've just seen this evening.
And we appreciate you bringing those to us tonight.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about the application?
I think staff did a really good job of hitting the highlights and we'll answer any questions you might have that need to get more detail.
Okay, we can do that when it comes to our part. Okay, are there any notified proponents of this application who would like to speak? Seeing none, are there any notified opponents of this application? Yes, sir. Could you come up to the speaker and tell us your name and the address of your house?
My name is Joseph Klotz. My address is 218 Pollock Street. Okay. In looking at the application, there were a number of things that I identified and wanted to bring to your attention. There we go. According to the guidelines, if we start with 2.1.2, it says there are areas within the historic districts where the development pattern may have been weakened by vacant lots and non-conforming structures. In such areas, preference shall be given to contributing structures when defining the development pattern for infill construction.
Joe, would you speak a little louder? Or move your mic a little?
Okay,
Thank
that
you.
help? Okay, I'll read that again. There are areas within the historic district where the development pattern may have been weakened by vacant lots and non-conforming structures. In such areas, preference shall be given to contributing structures when defining the development pattern for infill construction. And shortly, it'll make sense as to why I cited that one. But from here, we'll go to guideline 3.1.1. It says, consider the scale, mass, and proportion inherent to the surrounding historic development pattern and design modifications that incorporate these characteristics. Use basic shapes and forms that are common to the historic district. And then probably the most important one, which is 4.6.2. It says, locate decks in secondary and tertiary areas of visual concern.
Say that again?
Locate decks in secondary and tertiary areas of visual concern, and screen the underside with shrubbery, etc. This comes under decks and patios in our guidelines. Okay? And I have found no structures of this nature anywhere in the historic district, commercial or residential. I found no decks, no patios that extended from the front of the structure so far as this one does. If we take a look at the rest of the buildings on the block, there is no deck, there is no patio. There are porches, and none of the porches themselves are more than 8 feet in width. This proposal is 20 feet, which far exceeds the design of the rest of that block, but any other block in New Bern, in the historic district. There are no commercial buildings that have the patio out front. If we take a look at a couple of the restaurants, the patios and deck areas that they have are in tertiary areas of visual concern or in secondary areas of visual concern, nothing in the primary area of visual concern. So based on the guidelines, I would be against this application. Thank you.
Would the applicant at this point like to make a rebuttal to Mr. Klotz's?
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I think Dr. Joe makes some good points. From our point of view, this is somewhat of a non-conforming building within the historic district. Dr. Joe's mentioned a lot of terminology that has meaning in our guidelines, and it's up to this board to interpret what nomenclature applies to this particular project. Alternatively, I describe this more as a series of garden walls enclosing a terrace, and we've tried to incorporate some stepped terraced landscaping and planters to deal with the situation in what we believe is a congruous way to have this kind of modification in the historic district.
Okay. All right. Right. So, sir, would you like to make any other comments at this point in time?
Only one observation.
Okay.
And the observation is not the design of the project, but the observation is the use of the project. The use of the project is not as a garden. It's the use of it is as an extension to a restaurant. And it'll have tables, and it'll have chairs, and it'll have patrons. And that's very different than if we were talking about a terraced garden in somebody's backyard.
Okay. Is there anyone who has any relevant evidence and has standing that would like to comment on this project? Seeing none. Could we have the administrator staff's findings and recommendations?
Okay, I will enlarge this. If you want to read this. So we're talking about the project for 211 Pollock Street for Pietro Pasquale, sorry. The property has no historic name. It is a non-contributing structure, and there are therefore no National Register inventory descriptions nor a description in the sandbag book. So the project is to include construction of a terrace lined by 4-foot high brick garden walls in the primary AVC. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this application. For landscaping, 2.4.3, 2.4.4. Fences and garden walls, 2.5.2. Design principles, 3.1.4. Decks and patios, 4.6.4. Masonry, 5.1.2. Metals, 5.3.2 and 5.3.3. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in the tight weave development pattern. 2, the proposal is a garden wall and patio project. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the
Do we have any evidence from any city, state, or government person who would like to make any comments at this time? Seeing none. Sir, as the applicant, would you like to make any final comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so members of our commission here,
Just a question I have. In lots of you didn't show it in this rendering, but in lots of the drawings that we saw, the deck porch, whatever, extends no farther to the street than the other porches on the surrounding buildings.
It extends less far.
Well,
It
not
does.
the extent, but
It's within the average,
it's within the average.
but it's
distance.
neither the furthest out nor the closest in.
Yeah.
okay, does anybody else up on the commission have some questions they'd like to ask?
Trim, what trees are going to be planted there, please?
We've indicated landscaping representing scale to help you evaluate our application. We will be coming back in the future with specific plantings and species.
Okay. Are they a screen or shading or what? For screening?
Well, in our evaluation of the application, I think the only thing we're doing is trying to soften the view from the street by using landscaping in a way that we often see in the historic district. And so you see three categories of plantings, one being what I call kind of ground cover, low cover in the planters. You see some manicured bushes, which are maybe 1.5 feet tall, to give us some texture and variation in height, because that plays into the theme of our design. And then lastly, we've got two other landscaping items, which are small trees, I would say, and those trees roughly have a height of about 7 feet.
Okay. Another question. There's a bed and breakfast next door, and I wondered, is there a time cutoff for night use of the patio?
I am unaware of what the city ordinance is for that, but obviously we would be in compliance with the city ordinance.
There is one for the city, right?
To my knowledge, because that's a zoning issue, I have not researched that to share with you tonight.
Yeah. And, but the plan is to be open until the city says you have to close?
We haven't discussed specific hours with our client. They will be serving dinner.
Okay. To ease things on the street, I would like to ask, since it's hot, it's in that area, are the tables going to have umbrellas?
Likely so.
Okay, and so I'm wondering, will they be kind of in with the setting, not all balloons? And I'm trying to think of the neighborhood. I am concerned with some of Joe's
Understood. Again, since furnishings isn't necessarily one of the guidelines, we didn't include that within our service to the client, but I feel pretty confident in sharing. We have showed you some fixed table locations, and I would expect one umbrella per table. So there are 4 tables, I believe.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Thank you for the renderings. That's very helpful from last time, and it's like really bright up here and trying to actually see them. I'd love to see the one that you can see from the street, because having seen it sort of in plain view. Okay, so now I see there is like piercings through the wall of the fence part. Any consideration to like that ramp part for that to have piercings? So that's just, it seems just a little, in terms of mass and scale, a little heavy on the ramp right up next to the street. Any way to lighten that up?
We could certainly consider that.
Okay.
We have no objection to it.
Okay. That was my only comment about that. I think that we've all kind of struggled with defining exactly what this is, and that you can look at the guidelines in a lot of different ways. You've been calling it a terrace, kind of thinking about like hardscaping, and that certainly is something that you see around the district, and a fence and a garden wall is certainly something you'd see around the district, so.
So when you were asking him to lighten something up, are you asking him to lighten up over here on the right, the entry bricks going down the entry? Is that what you're asking him to
Yes.
lighten up?
Maybe, I don't know, in terms of the handicap, maybe do those two columns need to come all the way out? Maybe just that, if that backed up a little bit, I mean, just to the extent that it's like necessary in terms of construction or, you know, handicap accessibility, but if any way that could lighten up, I think that would help a little bit.
Yeah, we'd be open to that as well.
I had a question about, is there a gate in here anywhere? I don't see that.
No, ma'am.
Because I'm thinking that this opens right out onto the sidewalk. And I didn't know if you'd given any thoughts to gates to keep people out. I know that we have other places in town, for instance, that are putting tables out on the sidewalk. For instance, right down the street from where you're going to be on the other side, near the corner, there's a restaurant down there, and I think they have 2 or 3 tables out front. I know they also have seating in the back, and then we've got tables that have been further right over here, where the Beer Army is. They have tables out, and of course, down the middle of Middle Street, they're now closing it off, or they have been closing it off on Friday night, where they got tables out in the street. So I just was wondering, although I realize even if you put a gate, I guess if people want to go in and mess things up, all they got to do is climb over the wall.
Well, predominantly, and we have not discussed a gate as part of our design, mainly because our focus was trying to keep it open and make it a place of activity. And so
Okay.
my client's really interested in selling some Italian food and pizza and having some folks have some cool beverages out on the terrace.
Okay.
We want to make it as easy as possible for them to come and go.
Come and go, okay. I see in this design, and it's a little bit hard with the light behind me looking at this, so I'm going to give the best directions I can. So if you look at the tree on the right, below that tree, am I seeing a handrail in there, that kind of yellow beige line going up that wall? Is that a handrail?
Correct, the horizontal lighter color. Mhm.
Yes, okay, that's a handrail.
And so, since you picked up on that, the drawing's a little deceiving because it represents fairly accurately shadows, but the wall that Commissioner Stone was referring to with the column on the end, that column, it actually steps down, and so that's why you see the handrail. And maybe you can get a better idea by looking at the entry wall on the far side. You can see the edge of the brick, and those are identical.
Oh, I see. That's a better picture of it. I see.
So that, again, we were trying to keep things low and inviting, and to introduce a number of various heights to give the design some interest and give it some movement. And that's what we brought for you tonight.
Right, and perhaps as we're talking about maybe making a little bit less bold, the caps that you have perhaps maybe could be not so bold in terms
Agreed,
of
and
that.
I think that's what Commissioner Stone may have been referring to
Yeah.
earlier.
Is that what you were
Yes,
the
the
caps?
kind of the weight right at the front, and to the extent it's necessary for accessibility
Okay.
or anything else, if it could lighten up a little bit right at the front.
So no, we have flexibility
Okay,
to deal with it.
I
okay.
have another question, Ruth.
Okay,
Um,
another question?
Okay, I'm wondering, since we have all this bed and breakfast on Pollock, about the parking situation, is the 60-foot section in the rear of the house, in the tertiary area, does it have entrance from off of a main street? Is
No,
that
ma'am.
possibly it does not have an entrance?
No, well, it's got an entrance
Is there a driveway?
to the left of the terrace as you're looking at it from Pollock Street.
Yeah, but no cars can get back in the back of it.
Oh,
There's
no,
a parking
yes.
lot rear.
Yes,
Yeah, there's a
that's
parking
the
lot.
driveway.
But there's not another entrance to it. It's one
Right.
entrance in and one out.
There's a parking lot back there.
And you enter from
The
Pollock Street.
entrance is from Pollock Street to the back. Once you get to the back, there's no road out back there.
Is that what you're
Well,
asking?
how do
So
you get,
we-
pardon me, but how do you get to the back?
Well, there's a
There's
driveway right next to the
There's
building.
road right
Oh,
right
okay.
next.
So maybe we have a site plan that also, I believe, shows where that parking lot is.
Oh, good, okay.
There it goes, he's showing you right here. There's a road right
Yeah,
there.
that's the drive.
That's the
off Pollock.
driveway right there. Can you see
I
that?
see that,
Yeah,
yep.
that's a driveway to the back. And
Excellent.
you have a large parking area in the back, do you not?
It is one of the larger ones in town
Yeah.
on a private piece of property.
Yes.
Okay.
You'd attempt to match the brick to the existing structure and the mortar, et cetera?
We do, although I realize color isn't as important to you as a guideline. We anticipate having a red brick, and it's a conventional mortar, so it'll be a light gray, I would say.
And have you all made provisions, for floods and water coming up? And are you all
So,
putting
my-
something externally, or?
Well, my client has,
Okay,
and that work was done outside of our scope of work, but roughly about 3.5 feet up the wall, you've seen a coating, which is a flood-proofing membrane, and I think that was approved by staff as a minor.
okay. All right, do we have any other questions, any other comments? So if you're willing then to adjust the entranceway to make it not quite so bold, whoever's going to make the motion would need to add that as a addendum to the application. And you say you are open to doing that?
We are.
And that they would have to bring it back. Could we agree that they could bring it back to Matt for him to review that?
I'm agreeable.
I'm agreeable.
We're agreeable that Matt can look at that, and if he has a question, he can let me know. Okay? So any other questions at this point?
The only concern, one of the main concerns I have is the length it's going to be open at night. We have bed and breakfast on that street, and
That's not part of
they
our,
try to sleep. So,
it's not part of our
Yeah,
COA
but that's-
consideration.
That's not part of our purview.
Purview.
That is not part of our purview. But I do know there is a city ordinance for downtown about when things need to shut down at night, only because I live downtown and I hear wonderful music coming from down on the waterfront. So I know that there is one that, and I want to say that it's 10 o'clock, but of course, I don't have anything in front of me, but there is one.
I'm in bed before then.
Do what?
I'm in bed before then.
Oh, you
so
are.
I don't know when the,
Okay.
the
Well, I
ordinance
sit out
takes
on my
effect.
side porch sometime and listen to the nice music, the concert. Okay, so do we have any other questions at this point? Okay, so can I hear a motion?
Yes. Madam Chair, I move that we find the application for 211 Pollock Street for certificate of appropriateness be, we find that it's not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinances 15-411, 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Landscaping 2.4.3 and 2.4.4, fences and garden walls 2.5.2, design principles 3.1.4, decks and patios 4.6.4, masonry 5.1.2, metals 5.3.2 and 5.3.3. Statements of reason: the project's located in the tight weave development pattern. Proposal is a garden wall and patio project. Proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. City zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed the project and commented accordingly. The project is not incongruous with the guidelines, with the provision that the front wall be appropriately softened and reviewed by Matt.
A second?
Okay, we have a second. Does everyone understand the motion? Okay, we have a second. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All of those opposed, hearing none, the motion passed.
wait.
I oppose.
Sir?
I oppose.
Okay, all right. So there's three of us saying aye. Are there any who are opposed?
I
We have
oppose.
one opposition, okay? So the motion then does pass. So can I have a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Have it moved, we have a motion for that. Do I have a
Second.
second? We have a second for that. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All of those opposed?
No,
We have one no. The motion passes. Okay?
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. So you're coming back to us in just a moment. So, Joe, you don't have anything to do with this, with the Harvey Mansion, right?
Coming
Okay.
back.
So we have a motion to have,
Move that we have Joe back.
okay? Do I have a second?
So, yes, second.
Second. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Joe, you can rejoin us. Okay, so can we have the information on 221 South Front Street, otherwise known as the Harvey Mansion?
Absolutely. So now we're looking at the application for this as well. And you can see it is fully completed here and signed by their authorized representative and dated. Cover sheet. The certificate of appropriateness for the owner, for the representative being MBF Architects. Signed and notarized. Okay, so again, have to, change the size here. And here, are a series of historic photographs that we had seen during design review as well. Beginning in the early 20th century, even though the, building does of course date from much earlier, was the photographic evidence presented. And then this row shows some photographs that showed that the building had 4 chimneys. And so their first idea is to restore all 4 chimneys. There are currently 2, so to add the other 2 back. And finally, this photograph shows the current backside of the building, which we'll talk about a little bit more here. This is an aerial and a site plan, aerial on the left, showing the location of the property in the city. And then on the right, site plan, the dark area is the building itself, and the light area is the paved parking area with access from South Front Street on this side here. And on the right side is actually fenced in for mechanical units, I believe, and utilities. So, let's see. Continue down. And so the entrance, actually, I should mention, the entrance into the building is actually from the south side, off the parking lot. There is no entrance off the sidewalk. These are 2 elevations, one from the parking lot side on the left. Obviously, the entrance here in the bottom. But to note is that above the entrance are 2 balconies with 2 narrow doorways on each. Then on the right-hand side, or on the right-hand side drawing, this is the view from the street, where there are no doorways, as I mentioned, and you can see the window fenestration pattern here. The 2 side elevations clearly depict that there's, on each one, there is 1 chimney. This is a chimney that's actually on this east elevation, and then this is 1 chimney on the west elevation. There are some entrances here, but they are not relevant to this project. And but you can see, say, on this elevation here, on both of them, but let's use this one, the 2 also the facing of the balcony itself is a wood trim board. The deck of the balconies is also a T&G 1x4 wood deck. And then this is our inspections and zoning report here. In this case, it's filled out, and we can see that it does meet the land use ordinance, and it will require a building permit. So then, otherwise, we're ready with our findings and recommendations.
Okay. Is there anyone who has any conflict of interest with this project? Anyone who has any issues on the application completeness? Seeing none. So would the applicant like to add any other comments at this time?
I'll skip the introduction this time. And again, this application is as it was presented at design review. And I think staff did an adequate job of hitting the highlights, and we'll answer any questions you might have as they come up. Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody who wants to give testimony who is a notified proponent of this project? Is there anybody who wants to give testimony who is a notified opponent of this project? There's none so far. So we'll go through all the rebuttals. We don't need any of those. Is there anyone who has relevant evidence and has standing who would like to present any information? Seeing none. Sir, if you could give us the staff findings and recommendations on this project.
Okay, so this is for the project at 221 South Pollock Street for Harvey LLC, and the historic property name is the Harvey Mansion, built around 1798. It is listed as a contributing structure. The National Register inventory description for this from 2003 is a federal style, 3 stories above, raised basement, 5 bays wide, paired central windows above the arched entrance, interior end chimneys, and gable and parapet roof. The sand deck description was quite long, but the only relevant pieces were that it was converted to apartments in the 1940s. So the project is described to include the restoration of 2 chimneys, removal of 2 modern balconies, the addition of 4 new balconies, and the reconfiguration of doors and windows for the balcony changes, all in the tertiary AVC. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this application. For modifications 3.2.1, 3.2.4, 4.3.1, 4.3.2, 4.3.3, masonry 5.1.1, 5.1.2, 5.1.3, 5.1.4, for metals 5.3.3, for wood 5.2.1, 5.2.2, for paint 5.4.1, 5.4.2, 5.4.3. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in the dense fabric development pattern. 2, the proposal is a renovation and restoration project. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. So staff recommends the commission approve this application for the restoration of 2 chimneys, removal of 2 modern balconies, the addition of 4 new balconies, and the reconfiguration of doors and windows for the balcony changes, all in tertiary AVC.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone who has any evidence or testimony from any state, city, or government body? Seeing none. Sir, would you like to make any final comments about your application?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, members, what questions do you have, comments do you have at this point in time?
The chimneys, it looks like the structure originally had 4. And you're saying, and it's one now, and you're adding two.
There are two now,
There are two now.
yeah, so,
Okay, okay.
so
It'll be
we'd
back
like
to-
approval to add the other two.
And do you have enough information about the building to know more or less where those other two chimneys go? Is there something internal or in the structure to know where they belong?
We have very good clues, I will say, interior to the attic, and our plan is to replicate the chimneys that are existing when we reconstruct the missing ones.
Okay.
Tripp, are they serviceable chimneys or just for a show?
Well, they were serviceable at one time,
But they're not.
but they are no longer, and obviously the reconstructed ones will not function as fireplaces.
Okay.
I had a question about, so the south side of the building that faces the Trent River, those middle balconies that are there,
Yes, ma'am.
were they originally there and they were just made into doors and balconies?
So the best we can surmise is those balconies are circa 1970, when a previous owner did a lot of work to what we now recognize as the Harvey Mansion. We have in our photographs some evidence of sleeping porches and other constructions that have been on the back of the building, and so I can say with some certainty that at least from my interpretation of the original contributing structure built in the late 1700s, that those balconies did not exist.
Okay. And were there windows there?
That's our presumption, just because the doors are so narrow.
Okay.
And so when we look at the front elevation, you'll notice the two narrow windows that
Yes.
happen to be bathroom windows. We're
Yes.
assuming that the same happened on the south
On the
side,
back side.
and that those were converted at some time to construct the balconies.
So on the front part of the building that faces the street, which is the front of the building, so the picture there shows is that two small windows above what was originally the front door?
Yes, ma'am, we believe so.
Okay. And are you going to replace the back part? Because you said you thought that probably matched the back. So when you take those present balconies away, are you going to put in two small windows? Is that what you plan to do?
I believe we have,
Yes.
if I understand your question.
Can you ask that again, please?
Say that again?
So,
Can you ask that again, please?
Yes. So on the back part right here where these two doors are, so it looks like two doors, and I'm not sure if those are windows above it.
Transoms above it?
So you're going to make these two doors, you're going to take away the balconies, and you're going to make these two, what are now door areas, into two windows like were in the front originally.
correct.
Okay.
And I think we've got a picture showing what you're asking right here.
Okay, yes, okay. I'm clear, I got you now. Okay. Do we have any other questions on this? Anyone wants to make? Any questions, any concerns? Okay?
Well, just one, I guess the only comment is to the extent that all the pane sizes are gonna be different, I don't know what that, I don't know. I mean, it's just in terms of throwing it out there, that maybe it's not a full, go back where you were, Matt. Get back to, yeah,
Good.
For the front,
Go
Yeah.
to the right.
yeah.
this is the existing front.
Okay. See how those are, as opposed to a small window with a 6/6, isn't that right? The pane sizes seem more similar. So this is existing, right? What we're looking at?
Correct. So
Okay. So if you go back to the drawing for the new
we've
one.
got 4/4 in the small ones.
Yeah. So 4/4.
Do we have something?
Or is it, are those fixed or are those double?
Yeah, they're double hung, I believe.
So,
And I thought we had 4/4 in the that's wrong side.
So no. So,
It's-
so that, I think,
it's
I don't
a
know, that's just
slightly
what caught
different-
my eye, is if
Mhm.
the pane sizes were, because there's gonna be all different.
So if we can, let's talk a little bit about window sashes and our intent. Obviously, they're historic windows, although I'd be surprised if they're a couple hundred years old. They might be 100 years old, maybe. But our intent is to replicate the same type of construction that we currently have on the building for the window frames and the sashes, and including the muttons. And I apologize for having a slightly different rendering from front to back.
And Trip, are the windows and the doors to serve apartments, condominiums? What I'm asking really, are those windows in a hallway? Are they in the units, going to be in the units?
They're in bathrooms.
What?
Bathrooms?
Bathroom.
Okay, so it's a part of the, okay, gotcha.
So what we're looking at now is you have given these small windows, you've given 6/6, like the windows that are in each of these apartments. And are you now saying you're going to make them 4/4?
No, ma'am. The center windows just have a slightly different fenestration than the existing ones, and our intent is to make them match. So
Like
the
ones on the
existing
front.
small windows where the original balcony doors were are 4/4, unless I'm counting wrong. It's just got a slightly different frame.
You're showing it here as 6/6.
This is, what I'm looking
Oh,
at
I'm
is,
sorry.
I didn't need anything to figure.
Yeah.
but you're going to do
So
it like
we're
the
gonna
on the
make them
front.
4/4
But you
to match
intend to
the
make
other
them
side.
4/4 like the front?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay, so whoever's going to make this motion needs to include this detail in the motion that's going to be made, that you're going to change that, so that it matches the front windows.
And we're talking about just the windows, not the doors.
Yes, just these 4 windows
Just
right
those 4
here.
windows.
To match the 4 windows that are on the opposite side on South Front Street, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so if you'll write that down. And then ask that to be
Thank you.
brought back to Matt to have a
Should
look
be able
at.
to count, shouldn't it?
Okay, any other questions at this time? So can I have a motion for this COA?
I move that we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 221 Front Street, South Front Street, to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15-411, 215-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Modifications 3.2.1 and 3.2.4, windows and doors, 4.3.1 through 4.3.3, masonry 5.1.1 through 5.1.4, metals 5.3.3, wood 5.2.1 and 5.2.2, paint 5.4.1, 5.4.2 and 5.4.3. Statements of reason: the project is located in a dense fabric development pattern. The proposal is a renovation and restoration project. Proposed design, components, and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. The zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. Project's not incongruous with the guidelines. With the,
Jim?
yes,
I believe you meant findings of fact as opposed to statements of reason, correct?
findings of fact, yeah, okay, yep. With the understanding that the doors to be reinstalled as windows on the rear side of the building be 4/4s versus as shown.
Okay, is everyone clear on the motion? Anyone have any question? Okay? So, can we have a second to the motion?
Second?
Have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. Do I have a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. So can we have a motion to bring our committee member back to the board?
I move that we get Tripp back.
We have a second
Second?
with Peggy. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed, hearing none. Sir, you may come and join us. Okay, so the next item is number D, 809 East Front Street. Construction of a new infill house.
All right, so here we have our application. Again, fully prepared with the signature of the authorized representative and dated. This is the certificate of authorization for this and other properties by the owner for Coa Application PLC. And there's their signature, signatures up here, and then the notarization. So here's our first sheet. Most of it's on the left, we see the overall subdivision area, and we are talking about 809 is the one up, so upper left, but second from the top. Right? Third from the top. Oh, right. The existing building is at 12, which is shown here as blank. There's an existing building. So we also see here a quick rendering of the front of the house. These are photographs of the site, and so on the very upper left, on the left of that photograph is was the previously existing house, and now on the right is the newly constructed other house by these developers. And you can see a variety of those photographs here. Let's see, so we're building on a vacant lot, which is in the lower right photograph on the left-hand side, so to the left of that garage door. And this is the site plan, so again, zoomed in a little bit more, so we have, it's the lot number 13 here. And you can see, this is the one time, we will see that it has a front Yeah.
Yes.
If you have it on a Dropbox,
Yes.
it's the same way.
It's the same way.
I have it on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew I should have printed it.
Oh, yeah, the plans are. You want to try and do that? Put on the scanner here?
Make sure I can get the right, that's dated July 6th, is that right?
If we can do that, let's see.
Or, just the application,
Yes, well, your signature is July 6th, drawings.
okay, it's
Also
just down.
July 6th.
Great. Funny.
I mean,
There you go.
at least you can see the hatching correctly, I hope that's better.
Yes,
I mean, the form of it is the same, let me,
Fingers.
And you can zoom in or out. If you want to go ahead and talk about it.
it's similar to, the one we have on lot 12, or, excuse me, lot 14. And similar to lot 9 in that we have a small balcony over the garage area. It's a bit smaller than the one that we did on, the corner lot on Queen Street. But just enough to give someone, it's actually kind of a nice view up there, looking back towards, there's some greenery back there. And when you're up high, looking out of there, it really is kind of nice. So we wanted that back balcony. And then the double stacked front porch here. The detailing on it really is quite similar to most of the other ones that are there. I don't know if you have specific questions about the plan itself. But, they all have kind of a different brick step, and this one we wanted to do just a straight brick step down to the front. Some of them are flared. This one will be probably the most simple of all of them up there, but the detail is the same, the brick foundation, party board siding, AZEK railing,
Asphalt roofing.
asphalt roofing, a small bit of metal roofing on, just accent metal roofing.
Is the square footage similar to like the other houses that are
It's
there?
a bit smaller.
A bit smaller?
I don't remember what it is offhand, it should be up here, it is, well, it's 3,900 square feet, so.
Less their homes.
Oh, small.
Comparatively. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
And then we have our, and we'll switch this back to the laptop. And we have our zoning and inspections. You might just keep that
Okay.
in case we need to refer to that. And so we have the zoning officer
Does anyone have any conflict of interest with this project? Seeing none, anybody, any issues on the application's completeness? Seeing none. Would you like to add anything else about the project?
No.
Hearing none. There is nobody in our audience, so there's no proponents, there's no opponents, there's no relevant evidence and standing person, and there's no state, city, or government person either. So we'll go back to your recommendations then.
Okay, so this is for the project at 809 East Front Street for Vegetation Development Corporation. And there is no vacant lot, no historic property name, and no inventory or sand bank description. So this is described to include construction of a new infill house on a vacant parcel. Staff submits following historic district guidelines are appropriate in this application. Development pattern 3.1.1 through 3, design principles 3.1.1 through 5, infill construction 3.4.1 through 4, foundations 4.1.3, 4.1.4, walls, trim, and ornamentation 4.2.4, windows, doors, and openings 4.3.3, entrances 4.4.4, roofs 4.5.4, decks and patios 4.6.2, masonry 5.1.3, 5.1.5, 5.1.6, metals 5.3.3, 5.3.4, paint 5.4.2, 5.4.3, 5.4.4, and 5.4.6. Statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: the project is located in the narrow stitch development pattern. The proposal is an infill project. 3, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. 4, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 5, this project is not incongruous with the guidelines. Staff recommends the commission approve this application for construction of a new infill house on a vacant parcel.
Ma'am, do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Commission members, do you all have any questions, any comments that you want to make at this time?
It is lot 13, right, Sarah?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
No questions, do I see? No comments. Can I have a motion?
I move that we find the application for certificate of appropriateness for 808 East Front Street to be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinances, section 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Development pattern 2.1.1 through 2.1.3, design principles 3.1.1 through 3.1.5, infill construction 3.4.1 and 3.4.2, and 3.4.3 and 3.4.4. Foundations 4.1.3 and 4.1.4. Walls, trim, and ornamentation 4.2.4. Windows, doors, and openings 4.3.3. Entrances 4.4.4. Roofs 4.5.4. Decks 4.6.2. Masonry 5.1.3, 5.1.5, and 5.1.6. Metals 5.3.3 and 5.3.4. Paint 5.4.2, 3 and 4, and 5.4.6. Findings of fact: projects located in the narrow stitch development pattern. Proposals an infill project. Proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the guidelines. Zoning administrator and chief building official reviewed the project and commented accordingly. The project is not incongruous with the guidelines.
Do I have a second?
Second. And can we confirm the street address? Is it 809? I think Jim said 808.
It says, oh,
Yeah, 809.
809.
So
It says 808 somewhere.
it does, but I think it's 809.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just thought it might be important to somebody.
A friendly amendment, 809 is the property we're looking at. We've had a second. Everybody's aware of what we're voting on. Okay? All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passed. Do I have a motion to issue a COA?
So moved.
Second.
So moved. We have a second over here. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Hearing none, the COA, issuing of a COA has been approved for this project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we will see you again. Okay, the next item is old business, and we have none according to our agenda. We have no general public left, so I guess we'll hear no comments from them. Item 7 under new business, we have none. Under 8, HPC Administrator's Report. Do you have anything in there you want to speak to or add any information about?
No, I do not.
Okay. What about a report on the COA extensions issue? There's no report there?
Right.
Okay. Under other items and updates, I wanted to update you all on as we moved along, under kind of our project that we had about the awards project, and that we had put a proposal together and showed it to Matt, etc. I've also been talking to Alderman Sabina Bingle and discussed this with her, and she had some suggestions for our idea about giving an award. One of the suggestions was that we work with some of the other historic preservations organizations going on here in town. Like, for instance, my co-chair is working with the Historic Preservation Commission on the something Solomon.
King Solomon
King
Lodge.
Solomon Lodge. So that we have worked with other organizations in town, and that would present kind of a fuller representation of all of our efforts to get them involved and get the Historical Society involved. That was one suggestion that she made. The other suggestion that she made was that while we had talked about quarterly awards and then a final year award, her suggestion was that we're going to eventually run out of homes, run out of buildings over the years. So to give one final award at the end of the year, and to set up a group that is composed of a couple of us, a couple of people from the Historic Preservation Commission, and a couple of people for the Historical Society. And as I said, that we're going to give a full representation of what we have in the city. So I will move forward to gather information from them, to contact them about who they might want to be part of this effort to award the persons in our community who have done such a great job. And so I will move forward with that and come back with an updated report once I have contacted them, hopefully by our next official meeting that we have. So that's my update on that. Do we have any other items or updates anyone wants to make at this point in time?
I have 2 items.
2 items?
Yes. The first one is, and I have on your screen there, we have an application for 309 New Street, which is Centenary Church, and we're processing the minor COA for that, but I just wanted to bring you up to speed and kind of make you aware of the project, because it is in a rather visible location. So you can see here on your screen that we're talking about this playground on the right-hand side. They would like to replace the play equipment and the ground surface material. So the fencing pretty much stays in place, and these are the items that they're proposing for the playground. And this is the plan view of it, doesn't fit on the screen, but so from the street is at the bottom and then heading towards the back.
They don't plan to enlarge the enclosed area that they have.
No,
So it's the same area, it's just new updated things to play on.
right.
Kind of like what we got right back here, behind us.
Yes.
Yes.
And kind of like what they have now, but they're getting, I guess, new equipment. Maybe it's wearing out, I don't know. And the ground material will be some rubber mats or whatever the current state of the art is for playgrounds. Instead of right now, it's just all sand, I believe. So the only other potential change is that the fence they show here as being a straight angled line here, and then in the photograph, you'll see it has in the back right. Oh boy, let me see. Zoom in a lot. Currently has a zigzag in it, and they'll be, I guess, straightening that out. See the zigzag there? So, I guess it'll be angled from there straight back. Take out the zigzag.
And we're doing this as a minor.
Yes.
And is everybody, I asked him to bring,
Unless you guys feel like.
right, well, that's what I'm getting ready to say. Because it's so prominent on that street, I mean, I realize it's in the tertiary to the building, but it's not kind of, it's kind of like a house that sits on a corner. Even though people do something, you still can see it from the street. So I wanted him to bring this to y'all's attention, to see if you have any questions, or you want to do it as a minor, or you think they need to come and see us, or.
The playground is already existing, they're just putting in new equipment and
Right.
improving the surface so that the children don't get hurt.
Right.
I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be minor.
Right. Plus, these pieces look like they may have been donated over time, and so I suspect this will be a more coordinated, organized look, it'll be an upgrade.
Right. Yeah, we didn't have any objection to it, just only because it'll be so prominent that you can see it. I just wanted everybody to look at it, to know what's going on, in case somebody says, why are they putting this breaking on? So, okay, so we're all right with you doing that as a minor.
Okay.
I have a question, Ruth, before we adjourn. A question for Matt.
No.
At 211 Johnson, the amendment to elevate the historic kitchen, Matt, that chimney is now functional. When it's elevated, will it still be functional?
I don't know.
Should it be functional? I mean, it's historic.
Well, that's not really a criteria for HPC's concern.
Will they have to tear it down to lift it and rebuild it?
No. I don't believe so.
I think the way it was presented, they talked about filling in inside the kitchen.
Well, that was initially.
Yeah.
They subsequently decided to elevate the entire structure so that the floor of the existing floor will then come up and match the new floor of the rest of the structure. So the chimney or the hearth in that case is also at the floor level, I believe. So that would also come up as well. But they also described the entire chimney will be lifted and not disassembled and rebuilt.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have to do a new foundation for it.
What?
They'll have to do a new foundation for it, and so they'll have to.
Fill under some, yes, so there will be new
Right.
bricks underneath it.
Right.
But the actual historic chimney will still be there.
Yeah. Although it's not in our purview, I really hate to see them lose that functional status because it's really historic.
I don't know.
Who is that? Who has to determine that?
The owners?
What?
The owners.
So they don't
I
get-
would imagine as long as they're elevating the entire structure as opposed to just the infill inside of it, that there's no reason why it wouldn't continue to be functional.
Right.
Unless they were doing some sort of tax credit project, it's totally, or there's some sort of preservation easements on it, it's totally up to the owners.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you want him to gather some information about that and bring that back?
If it's in our, as he said, it may not be our,
Not really, no.
no.
No, it's not.
Okay. Did you have another
Yes, I
item
do
you
have a
wanted to
second.
present?
Yes, I do have a second one. 509 Broad Street, we've seen this and approved this before. That's just the application from before. If you remember, it's regarding this handicap ramp on this historic building. And this is just to show you the photograph or jog your memory of what we're talking about. We approved that's existing. Let me put down some more. One more. We approved this ramp and the handrail for this project. The State Historic Preservation Office is requesting, as part of the tax credit project that is involved with this, so this involves John Wood, that the vertical spindles be removed from the design and just the handrail and the posts be included, so that it is similar to the handrail at the front steps, which is the other reason why I showed the picture at the beginning, if you remember.
Another thing he was going to address on that, Matt, was the landscaping. Did he come back with that?
Not yet. So there, so you see there's no spindles on that either. So that is what they're requesting, is that the ramp handrail be similar to that.
And the overall height of that ramp was only, did I see 1 foot 11, like under 2 feet?
I believe so, yes.
So it's no
just
building
three steps
code or-
something there.
I don't know if that's really the, yeah.
And so with no spindles in it, since that's a handicapped ramp, does that meet the code for handicap? Do we know?
So,
Do you know?
this is a historic structure, I believe, and now we're speaking a little bit out of knowledge here. It's a building inspector's issue to determine whether or not what they're proposing is legal or not. But historic buildings often have some
Flexibility,
Leeway.
administration.
flexibility, leeway, exception allowed in the building code.
I would just be
But
concerned
I'm not an expert.
if that ramps, again, I understand that it's not gonna be our decision, but if that ramp is, as it appears, just a flat ramp and is nothing under the handrail, then people coming up in a wheelchair could very easily run that wheel right off the side of it, because there's nothing to
So
stop it.
it's going to be the decision of the building inspector. So primarily, the question here is whether or not these vertical spindles, if it's okay for me to handle this as a minor, to eliminate those from the design. It's an amendment to the COA.
Well, if you're saying it's up to the building inspector, why are you asking us that question?
No, it's up to the building inspector if we allow the spindles to be removed, if the design that they are proposing without spindles would then be legal as well. So it's up to both us and the building inspector. And questions about it being illegal as an ADA acceptable design is up to the building inspector. It's up to us to decide if it's okay from the historic's point of view.
So if we say, no, we don't want the spindles removed,
Right.
then what happens from there? What if the building inspector says they can be removed?
Well, then they would not be allowed to remove them from the design.
Or if we say no, and then it affects their tax credit project. Because that's who is asking for these
That's
spindles to go away,
Yeah, we'd be going against John Wood.
Right, we'd be going against the preservation, and the only, just kind of to Joe's point, I mean, and I see what, John's saying is, do they want to add maybe another bottom rail, so there is something for a wheel to bump
Just
up
that,
against, just to open up, I don't know.
That's,
I mean, that's
as
the
far
building
as an
inspector's.
ADA and wheelchair functionality thing,
right.
that's not our concern.
Right,
What is our concern is the historic.
right.
Well, if we ask the building inspector first, if their guess is that it would be fine, then it's easier for us to decide whether we're comfortable with removing the spindles or not. If we don't have that.
So maybe the more relevant question might be, if the spindles are removed and they are required to put in a horizontal bottom rail, are you guys okay with that?
That's
I don't,
better.
I don't think we should put that requirement on it. That's not our purview.
No,
It
but
is.
if they decide, is it okay with you as a historic decision whether or not to allow a horizontal member? Because
I'd be supportive of that.
that could happen next week or
Right.
Would that affect their tax status? Their,
well,
I
no,
mean-
this is kind of a four-way kind of decision here. The owner, the State Historic Preservation Office, us, it's 3 ways. And the building inspector.
Let's have Matt Boswell do his thing first.
To see if he would allow it.
and as a-
And what code requirements he'll enforce. And then that would help us have confidence in what kind of change, we're supporting or not.
Matt, are they under some sort of time constraint that you would like to have the ability to?
Well, everybody always is. I think it was implied, wasn't specified.
Why don't we just say it's okay to remove them if the building inspector says it's okay?
And from a safety standpoint, that second rail you mentioned, horizontal rail, would be a very good thing, because if I can just see a patient seated in that chair going up there, that bar is going to catch him at about his throat.
Well,
And
it doesn't have
that
to be
second
about-
rail would be,
There are other applications, I think, that would satisfy the safety need. It could be the way the cement is poured, creating slight, raised lip on the outside edge, so that if a wheel from a wheelchair hit it, it wouldn't go over that edge. It doesn't have to be a completely flat surface.
So my apprehension in anticipating what the building inspector might say, for instance, is going to change the appearance of the installation. Does that mean?
Madam Chair, just in the
And,
spirit of it, go ahead, I'm
oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Okay. So it's going to change the appearance of the installation, but, it's hard for me to anticipate what that change will be like. And I look at this stuff all the time, so it might be difficult for the rest of us to anticipate it. And just to be on the conservative side, just to be on the conservative side, I think once you remove all those balusters, you're going to find you need more newel posts because there's nothing holding up the rail in the middle. And then maybe it's got the bottom rail, maybe it doesn't, maybe it has rail extensions. There are all kinds of things that could affect the appearance.
So your suggestion is?
to bring
Let
that?
Matt Boswell render a decision, and then we'll probably need a new illustration of what that means.
Okay, and then.
Can everybody agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay, we agree on that.
And then we can decide if it's not design. You can tell me at design review whether or not to handle that as a minor.
And it's probably not an issue of whether it's a minor or not. It probably is. It's just a matter of we ought to see what we're approving before we approve it.
Yeah.
so we are going to at least consider the lower rail.
We're not going
agreeing
to
let
agree
Matt
on
Boswell
anything
tell
right
us.
now. We're just waiting to see what Matt Boswell's going to say he's going
Oh,
to do.
okay,
And then we're going to look at what we're willing to agree to.
gotcha.
Are we all clear on that?
Yeah.
Everybody, okay, we're all clear on that. That's what we're going to do, Matt. Okay, anybody else have any comments at this time?
I was just
Suggestions, questions?
Curious about where we stand with replacement commissioners, because we've lost several, and in a sense, potentially me.
Okay,
So what was that?
Well, George is not with us, and Christian is not with us, and I'm officially in limbo, and so, we can't afford to continue on with missing 3 commissioners.
George's replacement has been appointed. It will be John Blackelder. I believe he's the owner of the Airy B&B. So
understand that. I'm just saying, we're missing people, that's all.
Yeah, so that would be one vacant seat left.
Or mine, because I haven't been reappointed. And no one's asked me to be reappointed. And how long do I wait for the aldermen to do their responsibility?
Right, so I believe they've all been informed.
It's nice, that goes back to May now. So this is 3 months
Well,
down the road.
Actually,
No, they never changed it to June 30th while my term ended in May. So my term ended in May, then it ended in June, and now it's the end of July. And they still haven't done anything other than, I don't know, because they haven't talked to me.
Right, I believe it was around June 12th or something that they were first informed with a memo, each one of them, about the appointments that were necessary. So, yeah, who knows what they're working on.
Well, it would be nice to know.
It would be. So I guess you keep attended until they tell us something else, I think is what we're working on.
Right.
You could just do that. If that's okay with you.
Or not.
Or not, that's what I said. If that's okay with you, you
Well,
could just,
the only thing I'm thinking of is if it requires me to not attend in order to get them to make a decision, then I'll not attend. Maybe that will speed things up.
I
But I
understand.
find this very annoying.
I understand that you do, but that's not in our power to do anything about,
Yes,
that I'm
it
aware
is. It's
of.
in our
It
power
is?
to talk to the alderman and say, what are you doing? Or not. I mean, we're not allowed to talk to
But
them.
they have been, they've been notified.
I say, my term expired in May.
Okay. Well, if you don't want to keep coming, then you can let Matt know.
No. This is not on me. It's on them. My term expired. I don't have to resign. I don't have to say I don't want to come. It's on them to do something, meaning their responsibility.
Okay, and I guess they're going to do it in their time, and I'm just saying.
Well, I don't know
you
how
can-
to shake the tree.
Okay,
That's all I'm saying.
all right.
Well, Joe, that's interesting because this week there was a report from the alderman, and he said that he was nominating you.
Well, good for him. He's never talked to me.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting.
It's Oldham, right? What's his name?
It's Sabrina, isn't it, downtown?
No, it's not Sabrina.
Not Sabrina.
It's Oldham. He was the one who nominated me 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it goes back to him to ask me if I'm willing to serve another 3 years.
Mr.
When I
Klotz,
read it and I was relieved, I said, oh, there it is.
Mr. Klotz, your seat rotates between a member of the board and the mayor. According to my research, the next appointment would fall to the mayor. It's my understanding that in the past, at least 2 agenda packets that have been presented to the Board of Aldermen, that there have been memos about appointments, not just for this board, for several civilian boards that need appointments made, and I'm sure they're considering those. If you have specific questions or concerns, you're certainly welcome, as you indicated. It's not against the law to reach out to your elected officials, so that may be a good step.
Okay, so at this appointed hour, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I don't hear any opposed. We're adjourned.
Aye.